Pete Buttigieg says that if he were in Congress, he would vote to impeach President Trump. In a town hall meeting on MSNBC, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and presidential candidate also urged patience. Buttigieg says that he won't offer strategic advice to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has been reluctant to support impeachment, adding there is value in letting the ongoing congressional investigations play out.
First of all, I believe that the president deserves to be impeached. I think part of what's happening here is, to a lot of people, impeachment means removal from office. But it's really a process, right? And it's the only process we've got left. Because the DOJ has said you can't charge a sitting president. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense to suggest that the president is above the law. But basically it means the only place we can have a procedure, the only place we can have a due process, the only way we can go through the steps of evidence and so forth, as long as he is in the Oval Office, is in Congress in the form of an impeachment proceeding, which I think is what we're going to have to do. But in order to do that, it better be an airtight process. And so I do recognize that while we're still trying to get information, the investigations are ongoing, there are witnesses yet to come before Congress, that there may be some strategic wisdom in following that sequence. I'll leave that to Congress.
All right, so CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now to break it all down. How did he do in this town hall meeting?
Good morning. Well, these town halls are so interesting because they've become kind of something that candidates feel like they need to do. It's become kind of a nationalized primary because everybody is itching for that moment in the sun, that moment in the spotlight to try to break through. And it was interesting, actually. He had, the MSNBC had played a clip from when he was a participant in a town hall in 2003 when Dick Gephardt was there. So they played that clip. It was kind of a nice throwback.
That's interesting. So he said if he was in Congress, he would vote to impeach the president. But at the same time, he said he supports Nancy Pelosi. And we know that she has been hesitant to pursue that vein. So is this hypocritical or not?
You know, she has been cautious and she has been trying to weigh, you know, some in her caucus, the growing number actually, that want to move forward with impeachment, and others that are just not quite there yet and are still hearing some feedback from their districts. Pete Buttigieg, unlike a lot of his competitors or his other people in the race, he's not a member of Congress and never has been. So he can't really draw on that experience or tell them really what to do. And so I think that's what he's doing here, is on the one hand advocating for the impeachment proceedings to start, but on the other hand saying, look, I'm deferring to Congress and I trust Nancy Pelosi's leadership. That in and of itself is pretty interesting.
So the leader thus far in many of the polls is, of course, Joe Biden. Buttigieg was sort of critical of Joe Biden's message, basically saying, listen, you know, our political systems have been changed by this process. You can't just go back to business as usual. You know, what does that say about how he's setting himself up?
We're in a stage of the campaign where all of these candidates are trying to contrast themselves with Joe Biden. And we actually saw over the weekend when they had a convention in California, a lot of people took digs at Joe Biden, calling for real reform now. Pete Buttigieg, I think, out of many of these, is calling for generational change, which is a little bit different, saying that the country needs fresh new leadership. He's drawn on his experience not only as a mayor, but as also a veteran. And so that will be interesting to see on the debate stage, really, in a couple of weeks, if they are indeed on the same stage, if they're paired together, what that actually looks like to folks. And I think that's the picture that he's trying to paint here, is a call for new leadership.
Yeah. He weighed in on the president's trade war with China, and in particular, the impact that it's having on farmers. We've got a little bit of sound. We're going to play that.
What we're seeing right now is basically politically motivated gamesmanship, and it's coming down on your back. It's hurting farmers, it's hurting workers, it's hurting consumers. I wonder how many consumers are yet aware that the projection is that we will all pay, on average, $800 more a year, starting now, because of these tariffs. And by the way, a tariff is a tax. So if you ever believe the Republicans don't raise taxes, that's what they're doing right now.
All right, so that's one way to spin it, right? That many people say the people who end up paying tariffs are you and I, right?
Right.
But even sort of as I go back to the farmers, it certainly seems as if the people who have supported the president thus far continue to support them, even if they're really feeling the pinch more than the rest of us are, specifically the farmers.
Right, exactly. And you've seen some candidates try to do things to try to win back Trump voters. And you've seen some introduce policies to break up big farms, for example, and other areas to try to appeal to rural voters. This will be really interesting to see how this plays out, because we also heard from Kamala Harris calling this a tax. And so this is a different way of addressing this issue, saying, look, the Republicans have been talking about the tax cuts that they passed in 2017, but on the other hand, the president is waging this pretty risky trade war, and this will have real impacts yet. I think when people start to feel, if they do, the impacts of these tariffs and how the public responds to that, that's when we may see a shift. But I think this is a way for Democrats to start to appeal to Republican voters on the issue of tariffs and taxes.
Over the last few presidential elections, the role of women voters has been a huge conversation for people like you, right? And so we find ourselves in a similar place now, except when it comes to the Democrats, we have a number of female candidates. And he was sort of asked to weigh in on that. Why should women vote for you when they could vote for any number of the women who are running?
Right, exactly. Actually, this question has been posed to the men at a couple of different forums that I've been at, and it's interesting to see how they respond to the question, and they almost know that they're going to get it. And a lot of them have been asked if they would have a woman on the ticket, and that question in and of itself has some sexist undertones as well. And you saw Kamala Harris when she was asked about Biden saying, well, he would be a good vice president. So they're kind of responding this way. But look, women are a critical constituency. All of these candidates know that, and they have to make a case of why them and why now. We've also seen in the party that this is the most diverse field that they've ever seen, yet the leaders of this field are two white men, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And so that's an issue that they're trying to go through. And also this issue of, do we want someone who can defeat Donald Trump, or do we want someone who reflects what we envision this party to be? And that's what all these candidates are trying to weigh themselves in addition to the voters.
It's all very interesting stuff. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much.
Thank you.